Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
You have ice in your veins. When you make those threes, you hear the crowd roar. What's going through your mind?
Man, I live for those moments, man. You know, this is what March Madness is about, you know. When you're a kid, you want to be in these moments, and it felt like my dream came true today. My dream definitely came true today.
Alabama's Mark Sears scored 18 of his 23 points after halftime, and the Crimson Tide shot 70% from the floor in the second half and went on to beat Clemson 89-82 to punch a ticket to the Final Four. It's the first time in school history. It could have happened 30, 40, 50 years ago even, but it has happened now. Alabama's rolling on to the Final Four in Glendale, Arizona. And good evening, everybody, and welcome to Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. There's a reason why March Madness is considered, you know, arguably the best postseason in sports. And Alabama fans are enjoying the magic ride for the first time in 20 years, to get to this deep. And then they went even further. They went to the Elite Eight in 2004. Rodney, here's the deal. When March Madness stretches into April, you know you've really made it. Yeah. That means you're in the Final Four. And this is just, I'm telling you, it has been incredible this week here in Tuscaloosa. Alabama 89-82 over Clemson. The Tide really turned to its defense against North Carolina and Clemson to make plays down the stretch. Obviously, they had to make some shots, and they did, but they got some key stops in both those games. You're watching video from the Clemson game. Nick Pringle coming up big with 16 and 11. The freshman, Jaron Stevenson, knocked down 5 threes. He had a career-high 19, and then Mark Sears in the second half was making them from everywhere, doing his best Steph Curry. Alabama went 16 of 23 from the floor in the second half. That's 70%, including 10 of 15 from beyond the arc. Rodney, that's what it takes when you get into these kind of games. And Alabama had been a lot of them in the past in the Sweet 16. A lot of times it comes down to the final 2 or 3 or 4 minutes in that game and who makes the plays. Against North Carolina, against Clemson, and really even against Grand Canyon, Alabama made them. These were games that could have gone either way, but Alabama made the clutch plays at clutch time, and that's why they're in the Final Four.
Yeah, look, I think the 8-minute mark there in that Clemson game, 8 to the 5-minute mark, that 3-minute span, I think Clemson hit 4 threes.
They did.
It was actually less than 3 minutes, but they hit 4 threes. Alabama answered every one of them. That was the opportunity Clemson had to kind of take control of that game, gain the momentum down the stretch, but Alabama made those shots. I think that was really key. I think, you know, Pringle obviously stepped up really big in these 2 games against North Carolina and Clemson. Gary had 20 boards in those 2 games, had 11 against Clemson. I mean, he was really strong down low, hit some key baskets. We talked last week, what would it take? We said Grant Nelson has to come alive. He did in the North Carolina game, had a historic game. We also said there had to be some balance in the scoring. There was. You named all the guys that really were significant players in terms of the contributions they made in the scoring. So Alabama did what it took, man. They earned it.
They did, and you said it, and we both did, the supporting cast. Listen, Mark Sears is a star, okay? He's a second-team All-American. Maybe should have been a first-team All-American. But it's those guys around him that are key. And Alabama did this without Latrell Wrightsell Jr., who you could argue is their best pure three-point shooter. Nick Pringle dealing with a heel injury. Now the good news is, Rodney, as they move forward, you hope that Pringle gets some more rest, which he will. And it appears maybe that Wrightsell Jr. will be able to come back. So we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But right now, it's time for Coach Talk. Alabama basketball's breakthrough to the Final Four was vindication of sorts for head coach Nate Oates, because the Crimson Tide had been eliminated 3 years in a row, twice in the Sweet 16 and once in the first round. But it's also vindication for the entire basketball program, because before this year, the only Crimson Tide team to have made it past the Sweet 16 was back in 2004. On Sunday, Coach Oates talked about the significance of this postseason run.
We finally got here. I think it validates what we've been doing in the 5 years we've been here, and we're going to make it our goal to try to get here every year. It's not going to happen, so I don't want everybody to. It's not just making the Sweet 16 is not easy, let alone Final Four. So, I mean, I was talking to Greg Byrne. He was the AD at Arizona when they were really good. He told me this was his 4th Elite Eight game, and he was 0-3 in his first 3 at Arizona. So I didn't realize we got him his first Final Four. So I'm happy that we got Greg his first Final Four. That we got the state of Alabama, the University of Alabama, its first Final Four, and we're going to try to get our team prepared to make a run in the Final Four here.
All right, Ronnie, you don't fluke your way into the Final Four, okay? You got to win 4 games against good competition. And by the time you get to the Final Four, the competition's ramped up. You're either playing the best team in the country, like Alabama is with UConn, or you're playing teams that are playing their best basketball. NC State's on an amazing run. But for Alabama, they draw UConn. And I don't think that there you see Klingon right there, the 7-2 center. I don't think there's any doubt this has been the best team in the country all year. The other game will have NC State and Purdue. Connecticut's like an 11.5 point favorite. And Rodney, even though I picked Alabama to go to the Final Four, in my bracket, this is where it comes to an end. But do I think Alabama can win? Yes. Do I think they will? You know, I'd have to pick against them. This UConn team is beating an opposition by 27-plus points in 4 games. They went on a 30-0 run against a really good Illinois team. Rodney, they're going for their 2nd straight national title. They're a juggernaut.
Yeah, they're dominant. I mean, you know, again, you look at the talent they have. They're 35-3 this year. They're coming off the national championship. I mean, it's like you said, they are a machine. Now, look, it's really hard to win 2 national championships, or it's hard to win 1. Okay, it's hard to get to a Final Four. We've already established that, right? But here's the thing, Gary. Sometimes when you're a great team, you've been on a roll, you know what? You have a bad night. It's potentially possible that, you know, UConn doesn't play their best because Alabama does play really, really well. Alabama shoots the ball well. And if they do, Alabama gets hot, they can certainly win this game and be very competitive.
That's Reitzel, Jr., today at practice. Still don't know for sure if he'll play on Saturday night, but you feel good about the fact that he's practicing. We will see. Rodney, one thing I like, Danny Hurley is really a great coach, but he was always was in the shadow of his big brother Bobby, who played at Duke. Danny was a good player in his own right at Seton Hall, but Bobby Hurley was a star. But this Hurley family, their connection to Nate Oates, the first player that Dan Hurley signed when he was at Rhode Island was from Romulus High School in the Detroit area where Coach Oates coached. Then, of course, Bobby Hurley. Danny talked Bobby into hiring Nate at Buffalo, which led to being the head coach there eventually and now the head coach at Alabama. So my point is, I think a lot of teams are intimidated by UConn. I really do. I just think their aura, their physicality, the fact that Hurley's kind of an in-your-face coach, but because Hurley and Oates are friends, I think Alabama will be relaxed. I think they'll be loose. They may not win the game, but I think they'll play well.
Well, first of all, I think Nate Oates is confident. I think he's really confident. I think that rubs off on your players. They kind of get a feel for their head coach, the guy that's the leader, and I think he is really confident. Now, again, look, a lot of teams are intimidated, and I'm with you, Gary. I think that's the real key in this game is Alabama can't go in tight. They have to let it hang out. Listen, I'll say this too, Gary. In Alabama's situation, it is a little bit easier to play loose. You know, UConn could actually be a little uptight
Maybe
for this
so. All
game.
the pressure's on them.
Right.
All the pressure's on them. Listen, if Alabama loses Saturday night, there's disappointment, but this has already been a history-making season. If UConn loses, it's more than disappointment. It's flat out, hey, man, we should have not lost. So that's the pressure. If you're interested in getting out there, tickets on apps like Vivid Seats and SeatGeek are averaging about $334 per ticket. This is a hot ticket. And we mentioned Latrell Reitzer Jr., Rodney. How big a lift do you think it'll be for Alabama if he can go?
Oh, man, look, when you're at full force, when you've got a guy that's one of your better players, I mean, obviously it'd be a tremendous benefit.
And the celebration continues all week, not just out in Arizona, but here in Tuscaloosa. Last night, we were at Baumhauer's Victory Grill for Hey Coach, the Final Four edition, as Nate Oates, Nick Pringle, Rylan Griffin, and Jaron Stevenson prepped the Alabama fan base for the trip to the Final Four. Host Chris Stewart interviewed the players, and Coach Oates also took some phone calls and questions from the audience and signed some autographs. The team flew out at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and we will have in-depth coverage all week here in Tuscaloosa and from out in Glendale, Arizona, leading up to the games on Saturday night. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama held its first football scrimmage last week. Meanwhile, head coach Kalen DeBoer will talk about quarterback Jalen Milroe, and he'll update us on how the team is doing just about 10, 11 days out from A-Day. And coming up next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, or coming up in just a few minutes, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Go ahead and call now if you want to get through. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. Welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. No, we have not forgotten about football. How could we? It's just that this is a spring unlike any other. But still, the Crimson Tide football team is working. The Tide conducted its 9th workout of spring practice on Monday, spending 2 hours in full pads on the Thomas Drew practice fields. Now, last week, on a Thursday, Alabama held its first scrimmage, and there were many positive takeaways, according to head coach Jalen DeBoer. Here are some of the notes from TiderInsider.com. Rodney, the offensive side, Jalen Milroe, been super consistent, according to sources and to Coach DeBoer. Ty Simpson really has made a lot of progress. Austin Mack wowed people with a couple of throws. Washington transfer Jeremy Bernard, impressive at wide receiver. He caught a 40-yard pass from Ty Simpson. Kendrick Law and Caleb Odom, playmakers on the offensive side of the ball as well. James Brockemeyer, man, he's stepped in there at center. I'm told he's a bulldog.
Yeah.
You know, he's just looking good. Overall, though, the offensive line and pass protection is something that needs to be improved. One thing we'll keep an eye on, too, speaking of center, is Washington transfer Parker Brailsford, who did not participate in the scrimmage. We understand he's not been practicing, Rodney, so we don't know what his status is. He could be looking to make a move in the transfer portal. We will see. Defensively, the defensive line, you've already said, is stacked. A lot of talent there. Newcomers in the secondary making an impact. So I've kind of set you up with a lot of different angles to take, but just kind of pick it up.
Look, I really think it was a good first scrimmage. I think, Gary, and again, we didn't see it. Let's be clear. These are kind of reports that we're getting from different sources. But and I thought Kalen DeBoer seemed fairly positive, too, in his comments after the scrimmage. But, Gary, I mean, obviously, if you look at it right now, I don't think it's a real surprise. The offensive line on that side of the ball, on the other side of the ball, yeah, the secondary is really talented, but they are young. They're still kind of a work in progress. I think they're going to be really good because of that talent, because of the addition of Keon Sabb, the addition of Damani Jackson, and the return of Malachi Moore gives them some kind of leadership and direction back there. The offensive line, the interior, I think is okay. Right now, they can be really good. We know they could maybe be the best interior in the country. I think they still have to get those tackles worked out. Elijah Pritchett on one side and Aquel Bertrand, a Texas A&M transfer. Other side, you got a lot of young players. Wilkin Formby, of course, is a local product. Then you've got Miles McVay and some other young players competing there. I think if they can get that offensive line together, this offense has a chance to be really, really good.
All right, let's hear now from Coach DeBoer on Jalen Milroe. Now, this offense can be tweaked, and Coach DeBoer wants to make it clear that when you have a quarterback that's a dual threat like Jalen Milroe, you want to take advantage of that.
He's just so extremely fast, and you think you kind of you've got him bottled up, and he just runs right around you. So he's done a really good job. I think he's getting more and more comfortable with the offense every day. Especially when it comes to the pass game. But there's just things where he has options to make a play with his feet, and he's done that, I think, at the right time and being more and more comfortable just playing the game.
And, Rodney, we do have some negative news out of spring. Jalen Hale, who I think is going to be a really fine wide receiver, suffered a lower leg injury, possibly a knee injury, and he has had the surgery. He's posted on social media that he's on the road to recovery, but we really don't have a timeline for when he might return, do we?
No, we don't. And Kalen DeBoer said he didn't have one either, so we don't know. But again, you're right, Gary. I think he's one of the fine young players that they have. As a freshman last year, you saw that fantastic. That was a big play he made there against Ole Miss. You remember that game?
Huge play.
Yes. And so really hope that Jalen Hale can get ready, maybe be ready by August. Don't know that, but let's hope so.
And Rodney, before we get to the break, a quick thought on the scrimmage coming up this Saturday. Now, a lot of focus is on basketball, but that's a big scrimmage because it's the last one before the 8A game.
Yeah, I think it's really big. It gives them an opportunity, all these players, to kind of take that next step, Gary. And I think, too, with the offensive line the way it is, I'm really going to be kind of interested to see if they take a step from the first scrimmage.
All right. Still to come on TITV, Alabama baseball and softball SEC series over this past weekend. Alabama baseball at home, softball on the road. We'll tell you how they did. And coming up next, we will be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. There's the email address if you want to shoot us an email. We've got some emails that have already come in. And also, if you want to try to shout at us on Twitter, just make it to our attention, hashtag TITV. You can reach us that way. We'll be right back with more TITV right after this. Bama baseball moving up in the rankings, 3 spots from number 13. Clemson had a good week, 3-1. They beat Belmont up in Huntsville and then took 2 out of 3 from South Carolina at home over the weekend in an SEC series. Almost got the sweep. They were down 9-8 on Saturday, and T.J. McCamp trying to make a play around the third, too far, and hit a ground ball, and got him out to end the game after Alabama had been up 4-0. Then they trailed 9-4, got it back to 9-8, and almost got the win. But still, Alabama going to play Sanford tomorrow afternoon over Birmingham. That game is scheduled for this afternoon, but postponed due to weather. And then they travel to Kentucky for the SEC series this weekend. Alabama softball dropped its third consecutive SEC series. They've lost them all. They're 1-2 in every series they played. That's 3-6 overall. Need to play better. No other way around it. Lost the series at Kentucky. Still ranked, in the top 15 in the country, but 26-8 overall, but 3-6 in SEC play. They need to get it going. They were scheduled to play Jacksonville State this evening, but that game was canceled due to weather, and it will not be made up. They'll be playing Ole Miss this coming weekend. All right, welcome back into TITV, and let's get out on the phone lines. First up is our pal Steve over in Trussville. Hey, Steve.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call. Enjoy the show. You kind of answered my question. I was kind of interested on the Washington center. I'd heard that he had missed the past few practices, so it does appear that he's on his way out. Let me ask you a different question instead. The McDonald's High School All-American basketball game is tonight, and it's my understanding that Alabama has a couple of signees, or at least one signee, playing in that game. Do you know who they are?
Yeah, right off the top of my head, I can't tell you their name. They're out from that same school out there in California. They've got two, and then Perry, the point guard that just decommitted from Southern Cal, is an Alabama target. So a lot of interest. I will tell you this, Steve, the game's at 8 o'clock. I'm going to have highlights tonight on WVUA 23 News at 10. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll look up during the break and get those two young All-Americans' names for you and pass them along in the next segment. Because, Alabama has two signees plus another guy that they're hoping to get. All right, let's stay here in Tuscaloosa and talk with BT. Hey, BT.
Hey, Gary and Rodney. How are y'all doing?
Doing well.
I want to ask a question, Rodney and Gary. How are we going to control the fouls and who's going to come in the game? That situation.
Do you say fouls? Well, you know what? You want to stay out of foul trouble, BT, and that's a good point because Grant Nelson has had a propensity to get in foul trouble. Pringle, too. You do not want to get your bigs in foul trouble against this team. It could be a nightmare. So you want to play hard on defense. You want to play tough and physical. But, Rodney, you do want to try to play without fouling.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you look at the Donovan Klingman. Mm-hmm. He's a force inside,
He's a force.
Man. I tell you what,
He's a force.
Alabama played really well against some really prominent interior players these last couple of games. So I thought they played much better defensively.
All right, thanks for the phone calls. And still to come on TITV, exciting news for former Crimson Tide softball legend Kelly Kretschmann. Stay tuned to find out. And we'll get to more phone calls, emails, and I will also get those two McDonald's High School All-American Alabama signees and pass those along for you. And we'll have our email question of the day as well. So there's the phone number, the contact number right there. So stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, this is Alabama gymnastics, number 8 in the country. They're going to be in Ann Arbor, Michigan this week to compete in the 2024 NCAA championships. This week, Alabama was selected as the number 2 seed regional championships and will compete in the first semifinal session against number 9 Michigan, Kent State, and Penn State. The Tide will begin the competition on vault, rotating into uneven bars, the balance beam, and before finishing on the floor. Top 2 teams from each of the Thursday semifinals will advance to the NCAA regional or national championships on Saturday, April the 6th. And I hope I just kind of made a mess of that. But Alabama gymnastics is in action, okay? All right, speaking of, we knew that was prolific prep in California, those 2 McDonald's All-Americans that have signed with Alabama.
Yeah, Aiden Sherrill's a 6'10", 220-pound center. Darian Reed is his teammate, a 6'7", 180-pound forward. Gary, they're outstanding players, really talented. Of course, they have another player in this class, too, Nas Cunningham from out there, who's really outstanding. So it's like you said in the break, can I say it?
Yeah.
Do you mind? You don't mind me saying what you said, right? No. This isn't Nate Oates' last Final Four.
No, I don't mind at all, because there's not. There's going to be more, and I think there's going to be a national championship, if not this year, soon. All right, let's get to our email question of the day, brought to you by KDM Service Corporation, serving your family like our family. All right, so you got Parker Brailsford, a lot of interest. Tom and Pelham, is Parker Brailsford practicing? Any news or insight? Could he transfer? We've talked about that a little bit, Rodney, but you can go ahead and expand.
Gary, look, first of all, I think you always have to be careful because sometimes guys, you hear rumors, you hear speculation, things change. Obviously he has not participated, did not participate in the the scrimmage as well. So right now, James Brockemeyer, it's a guy that you and I both talked about, Gary, having a really strong offseason program, heading into spring practice. He's done a fantastic job. And I know a lot of people say, well, who's kind of backing up Brockemeyer? We get that a lot on TiderInsider.com. Joseph Ionata, a true freshman, is kind of getting a lot of work with the twos. So, again, you know what? You need a center. You need multiple centers. We'll see what ultimately happens with Parker Brailsford.
All right, before we have to hit the break, let's get to Rick. Hey, Rick, over in right here in Tuscaloosa. How are you? Rick? I may have. Yeah, go ahead. What you got?
I was wondering, love your show, but I was wondering about Tony Mitchell. Ever since he got in his trouble when he first came to the university, hadn't heard much more about him.
Yeah, Rick, outstanding defensive back out of Thompson High School in Alabaster. He's here, but I haven't heard much about him either, Rod. Have you?
Yeah, well, not much, but then again,
of course, no news may be good news.
Yeah, that's right. Talked to Colin Hitzler, of course, who's the safeties coach, and about him after that first practice when we had the media viewing opportunity. He said a lot of glowing things about Tony. I mean, he's got a ton of talent. I mean, he's got great size. Gary's a great athlete. And again, he's a young player. Don't forget, he's just a redshirt freshman.
All right. Thanks for the phone calls and emails. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of TITV. And chance for some bad weather tonight, but it looks pretty good out there right now. We'll be back after this. Alabama softball legend Kelly Kretschmann has been named the head coach of the U.S. Women's Elite Team by USA Softball. The Women's Elite Team will play Great Britain in 2 exhibition games at the end of the national team training camp in late June, and then will take part in the Japan All-Star Series in July. Kretschmann was also named as an assistant coach on the U.S. 18 women's national team. Rodney, I want to fix something on gymnastics. I said it was the regionals, but the top 2 teams from the regional semifinals in each session advanced to the regional final. And on Saturday, then the top 2 teams from the regional final advanced to the national championships. All right, we're going to leave you tonight with some video from the airport today when Alabama left. Tider Insider, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 on WVUA 23 or catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Enjoy the Tide. Good night.